Ses. Saygıdeğer konuklarımız.
Distinguished guests and distinguished audience, welcome. This is the final session of the Congress, and thank you very much for sticking with us with patience. And I'm sure everybody is tired. Thank you very much once again. In this final session of the Congress, TWEA vice presidents are going to share their operations. We regard TWEA as an umbrella, as a bridge institution. And TWEA, we consider it as a think tank. It leads the sector. This is our expectation. And in this scope, after the vice chairman's EU delegation program director, Christian Balabo, is going to explain EU practices and also mention about the activities within IPA program. To be honest, along with the vice chairs of TWEA, I observed many efforts that they exerted in Ankara, and they're going to explain them to us, and the effects of those efforts have been seen on the presentations made by the public officials. Okay, I would like to cut it short, the introduction part, and I would like to leave the floor to offshore wind energy vice chair, Ufuk Bey. Don't get excited, but before leaving the floor to you, we would like to thank to the chairman and the vice chairpersons and all the organizers, the organizing committee. Thank you very much for your great efforts to make it happen. Thank you. And let's have a big round of applause for the organizers. Ufuk Bey, now, okay, with your great excitement, you can start. Thank you very much for sticking to us in this final hour of the Congress. It has been more than 2.5 years, and we have been producing reports since day one. And in this very session, we aimed at explaining these results of the efforts. You know, we would like to explain what we did and what we are doing. I do have a presentation, by the way. Could you please have it on the screen? Okay, before proceeding with this presentation, 2023, since May, I have been the vice chair in charge of offshore wind energy. It was the beginning of the lobby, and since then, we have been discussing what we can do in offshore. That was the starting question, and we came up with a roadmap internally. And this is the final one of these discussions. But before that, we did many projects. And one of the most important ones of it is Shura, is another think tank of Turkey. Along with Shura, offshore wind energy capacity allocation mechanisms is the name of the report we published in cooperation with Shura. In the offshore wind energy plans, how we can do that, the good practices, bad practices, we examined them and we made recommendations for Turkiye. It has been a long time since we published this report. I mean, it was the beginning of this year, and it's developing very fast offshore market. Maybe we need to update it every 6 months, you know. The developments are quite fast. But to sum up, as a result of this study, I can say that if Turkey would like to reach established target power, the field analysis has to be completed. We cannot only allocate the capacity. Then the investor will develop the field, do the measurement, etc., establish the farm. We can't catch up with our targets. In 2035, we can't catch up with 5 gigawatts. What does it mean? Our ministry, I mean the public, from its own pocket, in the certain fields, they will do the measurements. It should be more than 5, 10, because the authorization and the permission processes might not be completed in all of them. So in order to mitigate the risk of not attaining the target, we need to conduct our own measurements on our own. This was one of the outputs and the most important outputs of this study, and as a result of it, this question led to other questions. Okay, the public will do the measurements, will spend the money, but how is it going to use these resources? It can't do that randomly, you know. We can't just look at the satellite info and see the fastest wind, etc. Or there should be mathematics behind it, you know. It has to be calculated well. We prefer the second path. This presentation is English, by the way. Sorry about that. In Turkey, master plan for offshore wind farm development zones. This is the name of the presentation, and the report about it is at the final stage. We will finish it very soon. I can't give you any link right now, but in the weeks to come, from TWEA's website, you can see the report, you can see the methodology, you can see the fields that we discovered. Okay. There are different stages of this study. Why do we do this? I already explained it. We have 5 gigawatt target. In order to realize this target, we are working on a calculated method. And we are going to do these measurements, and we will spend this money on those fields, selected fields. And with this mentality behind, we conducted the study. I'm going too fast, I know. I spent hundreds of hours in this, but it's too much info, I know. It takes time to digest the info, so I need to get slower. Okay, in terms of site selection, we did preliminary site selection, and in this preliminary site selection, the target was to find fixed bottom sites. What is the size of it in Turkey? And we use 3 simple parameters. The first one is the high wind potential. We identified them. We have more than one choice. We have more than 10 choices. There are many mesoscale data because we can guess the wind speed from the satellite data. At 150 meters height, we used Global Wind Atlas wind data and Mediterranean Sea regions with wind speeds higher than 6.5 meters per second. We took them. If it is under that, we excluded it. I'm an analyst. It's very wrong to define the site just on the criteria of the wind speed, but we have to start from somewhere. So we did our first evaluation. Fixed bottom, yeah, I know, it's not feasible. Our study is not going to reflect only today's fields. As a result of this study, we will be able to see all the fields that Turkey will use in the upcoming 10, 15 years. That and foundation suitability, bathymetry data. It is important selected areas based on bathymetry data used from general bathymetric chart of the oceans prioritizing depths is less than 60 meters for fixed bottom turbine installations. Therefore, at this stage, as I stated earlier, we eliminated the depths more than 60 meters. And the final layer is the exclusive economic zone. Yes, we would like to set up wind farms. You can see here we checked the sites limited to Turkey's exclusive economic zone, and we stayed outside 6-mile boundaries of neighboring countries per international law. In agency, we got the support of TWEA, by the way, and also a Naval Code Research Center is there in Ankara. That's the only think tank working in naval code, and they do have a good accumulation of info in this field, and they let us use their data. In agency, our relegation is 6-mile. In the world, it is 12-mile as economic zone. But in agency, it is 6-mile. Because Greek islands are very close to the main continent. So we are getting 6-mile boundaries of the Greek islands because there might be conflicts and we don't want to develop projects in these zones, risky zones. As a result, even if you take the picture, you can't see the map well. We define 20 sites, preliminary 20 sites. On the European side of the Black Sea, we have sites. We have sites in the Marmara Sea and Aegean, and also in Mersin and in Hatay. So these are meeting the criteria that I just mentioned. This was the first stage, and in the second stage, we do detailed analysis. What we consider in the detailed analysis, there are two parameters. The first one is the energy potential, and the second one is the limitations and restrictions. Among all these sites, the potentials, we used our onshore experience here. Ebru Hanım supported us very much here, and they shared the data which is missing. We found out these zones, and most of these strategies can be used for the offshore, and very comprehensive offshore wind restrictions database was created. This is the constraint database. Residential areas on the coastal zone, and it should be far from 2 kilometers and 5 kilometers. We put a buffer zone, 2 to 5 kilometers, shipping lane. The official ship routes, we have that, and you can't build closer than 1 kilometer. And there are also routes which are used frequently by the ships, and we can get that data from GPS. We have many ports. They do have zones of authority. Within those authority zones, we do have anchoring fields. If a commercial ship comes to Turkey, if they have to wait for some time, there are parking zones in the sea, and there might be traffic in those fields, and so these regions are risky regions for the offshore wind farms. Protection zones. It might be protected environmentally or tourism, or the forest general directorate has protection zones. We excluded them. We excluded bird migration routes. You see this red map from north to south. We put GPS to their feet. These are real data. We check the active fault lines. War and mania, we use them in the onshore. The aircraft traffic, they're war devices. And also there are some approach distances of the airports, which are called as mania. Official marine navigation route, I already talked about that. I don't want to be too long. There are other additional 10 constraints, and we examined them all. It's not enough to define the constraints. These are the most important parts of the analysis, to define the constraints. But more importantly, we need to score these constraints. The mentality behind is that absence of constraints, to one column for each site. Within a table, we give certain scores. It might be 0, 1, or 2. If your score is high, score 0 means that there is no problem of establishing a wind farm. When we say one constraint, there is one constraint, but it is easy to manage. When we say 2, this constraint might result in very serious issues, and it might even halt the construction of the wind farm. So we analyze them, and you can see here total constraint score for all the sites. And each constraint is not equally important with each other. Nation security radar, for example, it has the highest score, or the bird migration zone constraints, they are not equally treated, they are not equally risky, and we give them some weight from 0 to 5. The bird migration routes, 2, we scored it. If it is it is about national security, we gave 5, and we collected and added all these scores for each site. And after doing that, in Taşucu, for example, our constraint score was 5. In Bayramdere site, for example, it is 25-30. 25-30, it means that we should stay away from this site. We should not build anything here. But we went into more details. Yes, there is a field of 200 turbines. It has a limitation of 32, but if I narrow it down, I can decrease the constraint score, and we made an additional study, and we refined these sites, and we transformed them into smaller sites, and then we tried to keep all the constraint scores under 10. And this, I do have a constraint score for all the sites that I mentioned. Is this the only parameter? No, LCOE, that's the cost of unit energy. We did the turbine micrositing, and in total, in 20 sites, 1,400 turbine sequencing was achieved. And we did a forecast of energy production. All these forecasts are on the mesoscale and global wind atlas data. The uncertainty is at around 20%, so we should not take an investment decision only on trusting them. This should only be used to compare the sites. And you can see here, LCOE calculation is done based on the following parameters: CAPEX, OPEX. OPEX is fixed in all the sites. What does it mean? How I'm going to feed these sites, from which ports, OPEX will be kept fixed, but on the CAPEX side, capital expenditure, we differentiated the fields. According to what? There is a Catapult institution in the UK. You can check the website. In Catapult, they, for 500 megawatt project site in the UK, there is a CAPEX breakdown that they shared from the cost of the turbine to the main costs of the elements. They shared their breakdowns. And thanks to this data, by making use of these breakdowns, we could differentiate our own sites from each other.
And we use the project field, the number of turbines and depth of the water and to the height of the waves. All of this gives us the cost or changes the cost of the foundation of this offshore wind turbines. So for each and every parameter, we differentiate and found out a specific capex for each area, for each region. And we used also the energy production and calculated the LCOE. So what did we receive from this? So we have a constraints score and an LCOE score. So to combine and to evaluate these all, we list these areas, these fields, in terms of their constraint score, and we did the same for their LCOE score, from low to high. And this is a ranking from 1 to 20. So when we add these ranking scores, we found out the total score. So for the Edremit field, is our best, the third best when it comes to LCOE, but in terms of exclusion score, it's on the fifth. So we combine both information. So if we are going to measure in a field, this field should be the Edremit field. And you see on our list the first 5 where we think there should be a measurement. So this is the order where we should do the measurements. So these should be the first 5 fields where there should be measurements been made. So there are some criteria, like we have a intelligence radar in Edremit, for example. Of course, we cannot use this field because of this intelligence. But I think we can talk about the national security, and maybe there could be a solution here. So this is also one of the criteria we used. Thank you, Ufuk Bey, for this detailed presentation. So Uğur Bey says maybe we should take the questions beforehand, or should we do it at the end? At the end. Ebru Hanım will have the word next, but before I want to make a brief summary. So Ufuk Bey talked about our first report where TWEA and Shura worked together. So we had the best practices of the world and evaluated those and looked at the national mechanism. But in this study, which has been done to find out how the technical possibilities and constraints of the application of offshore wind farms are, and what the economic applications implications are. So this is, in this regard, a very important and detailed study. So Ebru Hanım is also a hand in this study, and she will talk next about Taşel, about this project, about the project in Taşel region. Thank you. As management, when we get together, then we think then we will be able to start a wind farm from zero, from scratch. So, but we are sitting here together, all parties, so we have a new language here, which is fine. We started with this study 2022. But before our General Assembly, we had a list, a to-do list, and what we want to do is to have a one-stop shop where all the permits are taken, and these fields should be prepared to open to a tender. So this was already done, but we have the opportunity to talk about this now. So the Ministry of Energy starts with the environmental impact evaluation, and like Ufuk said, we started from an idea. One of those was the supply security, because we have a great database. We can see wind, and we can add constraints. It's a large area, and in different stages, we can do an investment planning. This was the main idea while we started. So we found out what the main areas are, and which are sufficient for energy production. When we are talking about the fields, I cannot share all of the constraint information with you, but I can talk about it. So we have 4 phases, like you can see here. On the left and on the second from the left, we see where we have a lot of wind turbines. We assume that the investment here can be very fast. But on the eastern part, on the eastern field, the measurements are not very detailed or not enough in numbers, so maybe the state can do measurements here, was an idea. So this is a model, this is a hybrid model. We have wind turbines there, and on the same fields we have also solar panels, and these can be also put together and used as in a hybrid system. So we have a radar here, and we have a bore station. For 7 kilometers you can use it, but after 7 kilometers there is a technology change needed. So otherwise there are no major constraints. But we see these are forest areas, but without any forest. But they are counted as forest regions. And this problem has solved itself. The investment here and the prices for the investment values can be seen here. 33 terawatt hours of energy production, $10 billion of investment value, and here solar energy is 22 terawatt hours and $8 billion. And there we have storage here, and not at the beginning, but for the storage and investment is value of $7 billion, and hydrogen production plant $10 billion, and we have 35 for equipment and $5 billion for infrastructure. So after the earthquake, this is this is a great area because it's not in a earthquake threatened area, so there are no fault lines close by. And on the HBDC is a subject where we talked for the first time, and this is the first project where we talk about HTBC in a concrete way. So we're using our own database, but of course you have to pull this data from the database and have to be able to analyze it. So microsighting studies, 700 hours, but this is a relative old figure. We worked a lot. So master plan and details started from this project, but was realized in a totally different project. So the carbon numbers are to be seen here. I think we can share this information with you later. So starting from April 2022, we started with the first analysis, preliminary energy analysis. No, sorry, 2020. Now, no, again, 2022. And then these fields has been nominated as candidate areas from the ministry. Then we did the constraint analysis, and these fields are opened for on the 15th of January 2023 as YECA fields. So this is Mr. Uğur's, Mr. Onur's expertise area, like mine. So we thought, what can we do about this? So the field-based OPEX calculation should be done, and the cost should be added to the LCOE calculation. And speaking with the ministries and departments, doing a environmental impact study, HVDC analysis, and next there's transport projects, because we're talking about a transport of not only of equipment, but also there will be a new industry in this region, and this would pull people into this region. So therefore you need buildings there, so you need a building plan, and there are also some infrastructure projects should be added, and the buying of land. So these are not areas that are used for agriculture, but this is a forest area, but there is no forest there, like I said, so it's easy to build here. So when we talk about the YECA models and the opportunity that this could be changed, the Ministry of Energy wanted to approach from a different angle. On the left side, we see the ideal process where the investor is where everything happens fast, where everything happens quick, and the reinvestment is possible. So we did it on the 14th of August. So at this part, when we think of some criteria without the environmental impact report, 12 months is an ideal time. We would wish it would be that fast, but it is very difficult nowadays because of the area. Sometimes it is privately owned, sometimes it is a forest area with an actual forest. So we assume that this permit time frame would be 2 years around. This was a short presentation. Maybe I can answer questions later. Thank you, Ebru Hanım. In the I wanted to switch over to Urbey, but the development of the project and permits, that's what we talked about. Urbey would be talking about LCOE, so he can rest his voice a little bit. Ali Bey will have the word now. Is the with Ali. I want to continue with Ali Aydın, and he will talk about the consultancy he does and an inventory work for our industry. He will give some short information about this subject. Thank you, and thanks to all our guests who listened to us for these 2 days. Since the first day, we saw the TWEA as an inventory of data and use this with all of our stakeholders and their investors. And this was our main goal, to share this information. Wind turbines, and before the wind turbines, the selection of the areas, of the fields, the logistics, the assembly, and afterwards taking the turbines online. We have two important points. One is that these turbines have a lifespan of 25 years, and we want to use these our national companies, our Turkish companies, to make the maintenance and repairs for these turbines. And we did a workshop where we talked about a training, and all of the written and digital documents you can find in the bags we distributed amongst you. When we talk about this workshop report, we had 90 participants from different companies and manufacturers of turbines and other components. This workshop has been organized in Balıkesir, and the reasoning behind it was our activity areas, our needs, and our problems. So our SWOT analysis, to make our SWOT analysis with a common language and explain it to our whole ecosystem. So after this report, we started with an inventory work. We will start this December with an inventory work with all of the companies in Turkey. So with turbine manufacturers in Turkey, when we go a little bit to the east, investors who have machines, who have a machine park, and the personnel, the capacities, our machine parks, and our services will be able to transfer this and will help them. And the Union of Turkish Wind Energy Companies wants to share this information with the stakeholders and with the policymakers. Another important aspect is, while manufacturing these turbines and taking them online, and the production of components, in the Aegean region of Turkey, we have a serious infrastructure investment, and around 50,000 people are employed here, and there is a export number of almost 2 billion euros. And together with the investment and with the incentive system in Turkey, we can take an output, and we wrote it also into our executive summary. All of the components, all of the parts, and the prices of the electricity, to the wingspan of the blades and our readiness to production, to manufacturing, and the support of the state, and that the investors, together with the output of this report, has been given to them, and the development to let them find out that they can use it, so that on the side of repair and maintenance and on the industry side, bitmiyor. And together with the support of our state, with the incentive of investments, together with main components, with major operations, with our smallest personnel, with our even with our smallest engineers, we find our own solutions, we do our own manufacturing, and we fulfill our own needs. We are able to do this, and we have also a great win in terms of export.
When you examine industry inventory report or service maintenance workshop report, we can say that the values are qualified, measured. And we will continue these efforts in the years to come. And updated data and then the needs will be analyzed. And the motto of this Congress and the requirements at 5 gigawatts and HR, service, maintenance, engineering efforts are going to be shared with you analytically. And we kindly ask you to read the reports and give your feedbacks to us and contribute to these reports. I kindly ask you on behalf of the board and on myself, these feedbacks are very valuable. Please share them with us so that we can create better reports. Thank you very much. I would like to cut it short in order to use the time efficiently. Ali Bey, thank you very much for this detailed explanation and timely explanation. And thank you very much for the good organization of this Congress. The reports can be reachable to our members, right? And also Congress participants from our stands. You can get them in English and Turkish, and through our digital channels, you can also reach them. Is it open to everyone? Right now, it is open to our members, statistics reports, and the other reports. But if there is any special demand, we would be more than happy to share. We can invite them to become a member. But as far as I can see in the audience, everybody is member. Thank you very much for inviting them to be members of the association.
If you don't mind, I would like to continue with you. We talked that we'll talk you at the last portion, but I would like to, as mentioned, our vice president responsible of investors, he will going to make his speech in the last portion. So we are listening to you. AB delegasyonu program
EU delegation program director Kristen Balaro is going to talk about EU practices and IPA.
Let me start just by thanking the organizer, because this was really today is very intensive, very fruitful, and I really would like to pass on behalf of the EU delegation to Turkiye all my appreciation for that. And thanks also for the very resilient audience that are still, and I promised I will try really to be very short in my presentation. I don't know how to change the slides. Maybe, yes, there is a device, is it? This one there. Very good. So just to give a bit of a sense why wind and offshore in particular is so important, I will not tell you the whole story, because you know that this clean energy transition is certainly a priority for the EU, and I'm pleased to see that also for Turkey is a priority. We have a target, very ambitious target, that was brought by the new policy packages, the so-called EU for 55 and Repower EU, and the ambition is really to increase substantially the penetration of renewable energy in the energy mix. You see that the target is 42.5, although we hope to have it 45. But this is certainly important for addressing climate change, but of course there is much more than that. And if you see the number according to the projections, the share of wind-based electricity should increase, should double by 2030. And the capacity also should, and we aim to have up to 500 gigawatt installed, wind in total, of course. But this also means that this is a great and important driver for investments, because if you see the last point, that what we need to install in terms of yearly increase, we need to install about 37 gigawatt per year. This is a really huge, massive endeavor and investment. But why we do that? As I said, there is much more than addressing climate change. And if you see the impact, the positive impact on jobs, which I think also for Turkey is a very important element, this gives you already the, per se, the importance. Certainly, there is a dimension which is attached also to market, to business, to manufacturing, but I will come back to that later. You also know that in recent years, unfortunately, there were some challenges for wind manufacturers, and you remember that there were some companies also forced to close. To this extent, the Commission decided to respond quite quickly, and basically all the problems that I try to list here, I think are common also for, I mean, you are very familiar already with that. Unfortunately, certainly there is an inflation which is quite substantial, but other elements such as, for example, the better design of auctions and to allow the investors to have information, and allow me to say the really big issue is to address the risk. So to act on two levels. On the one hand, really reduce the risk for investors, and on the other side, to increase as much as possible the benefits for the society. And of course, also availability of workers, of spare parts, of OEM, all this. To this extent, the Commission came forward with this wind power action plan. You will see listed there actually all the reactions to the challenges that were identified. I will just mention a few of them because I think that might be of interest also for you. And in particular, one element is, as I said, we need to increase deployment. We need to increase, as you saw, 37 gigawatt per year, means that this requires a systemic change. This requires acting on different levels, from permitting, from more coordinated actions, including the developers, but also the TSOs, but also the grid design and implementation. So it's really a comprehensive package that you need to put in place to really achieve this higher penetration. Another point was also to improve the auction design. As I said before, auctions are now somehow a policy tool which is replacing somehow the so-called market-based or feed-in tariff that were sort of the previous one. A well-designed auction is very powerful because not only creates a stable framework for investors, but also addresses a number of additional economic benefits. In fact, in the auction now, there is also several elements of interest also for you. This morning, I think was mentioned a bit also this pre-qualification and the cyber security, which is an element maybe that could be also interesting here, which is a requirement. Another point is really to ensure this level playing field, which was also expressed before. And this is, I think, also very important, especially also for the session that was just before, what in terms of value chains, supply and value chains. In the EU, we try to have the systemic approach, we try to act on different levers, certainly increasing, pushing deployment, increasing the capacity, which means modernization of the grid. But not only, it's important to help manufacturers. And that is why recently the Commission came forward with two important pieces of legislation, the Net Zero Industry Act, which is a piece of the European Green Deal industrial plan, which really help and aims at scaling up manufacturing of different clean technologies, not only wind, but wind and offshore in particular. The other element is a bit attached, is about critical raw materials. And for wind, this is also very important when you think about direct drive, for example. These are elements, and by the way, I think these two policy approaches, especially for the kind of manufacturing system that you have in Turkey, might be very interesting also to explore. Offshore ambition, I think I already explained yesterday, is not very visible, I'm sorry. Originally, already in 2020, the Commission put forward an offshore strategy with the objective to reach 60 gigawatt. This was even sort of superadded by the latest agreement with member states, now aim at having more than 120 by 2030, with the ambition really to grow even further. Here, just to summarize a bit all the different elements which I mentioned before, really to increase this is not only one, there is not only one recipe and there is not only one stakeholder. It is really a teamwork exercise. And I'm very pleased, in fact, that you invited different ministries, because Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Industry, but even other stakeholders, and very importantly, I mean, your organization, because your experience, I think, could feed and feedback the policymakers. And from the EU side, that's exactly the approach. We really try and sort of have this partnership in really addressing together the issues. This is not, please forget this. This is a table summarizing all the funding options. This is mainly for member states, but maybe couple of funding options that I would like to mention. One in particular is the Horizon Europe, which is the EU Research and Innovation Program, which Turkiye is also eligible, and I think you are also very active, and I'm very proud of that, because the other additional element which I mentioned is about innovation, is about research innovation. Really, especially when we go to offshore, and you were discussing the opportunity for floating, for example, there is really a huge push for research and innovation there. Most of these technologies, they are still with a sort of low TRL, so they still require innovation, they still require investments, and in some areas, I think this is a particularly interesting edge for Turkey in particular. Few words about the financial assistance of the EU to Turkey. I already described this yesterday, and tomorrow the colleagues from the World Bank will go in much more detail into that. But just want to recap a bit, because as you know, Turkey is a country which is still in the accession process with the EU, and that therefore benefits from what is called the EU instrument for pre-accession. This instrument, now we are already in the third cycle, but this instrument already put quite substantial resources to support the process of approximation of Turkey in terms of legislation principle to what the EU is doing, and with great success, I have to say, especially if you look about the renewable and the great sort of increase in the renewable in the country, in particular under the so-called IPA2 we decided to invest more than 12 million euros together with the World Bank as an implementing partner to the benefit, of course, of the Ministry of Energy. This program is a very comprehensive program, it's a very large, we have different sections, but the section which you are more interested with is the second part, which is about offshore wind. And tomorrow, I guess, there will be a very detailed presentation about the activities, and also yesterday we presented the activities. So studies really providing all the necessary information and approaching from a very holistic perspective, so not only giving the precise quantification of the capacity, but also addressing environmental constraint and social constraint. This is a very important endeavor, and I'm really thankful to the World Bank for the excellent work that they are accomplishing there. Let me finish. I promise to be short, so let me finish maybe with the future, with what could be next. As I said, we are now in the third cycle of EPA, and since Turkey is growing a lot, and we see that I would say certainly it's quite mature, and even if you see the level of stakeholders, allow me to say, is really a European country from this perspective. I think now there is a moment to scale up and to change a bit the gear. So therefore, the idea is to really have a bit more strategic focus and really to focus on common priorities. And allow me to say, don't quote me for that, but I believe that offshore might certainly be one of those. To this extent, new funding instruments have been put forward. You might be already familiar with what is called the European Fund for Sustainable Development, the so-called EFSD+, which foresees a specific Turkish investment platform. This is not yet fully operational, but slowly is getting on the picture. I put there a couple of ideas for the future. This is just for brainstorming, if allow me to say it, especially because I see that after these 2 days, I got quite a number of interesting inputs and feedback, and I'm eager also to read the reports that you were mentioning indeed. I think it's really a moment to think about what could be next. How maybe to leverage different EU member states and EU and cooperating with Turkey, and to really create what we call Team Europe initiative in Europe. And why not also thinking more specifically about a multi-stakeholder platform on offshore wind, where we can really ask financiers, stakeholders, civil society, investors, to think about how can we join forces to really make this big leap, especially offshore wind, as we hear, is a quite complicated, quite expensive, allow me to say, but also very interesting and powerful for all the benefit which I tried to illustrate in the beginning. I really stop there because I want to be very nice with you all. Thank you very much for staying with us. Thanks a lot.
First of all, for the excellent time management of the presentation and for the insights that you are shared with us, especially the focus on the common problems that you mentioned in your presentation, that what Europe is faced and what Turkey is facing at the moment. We are facing the common problems, and also your focus on the manufacturing and the supply chain issues also is very important. Thank you very much for your notes. Şimdi oturumuza son olarak yatırımcı.
Last but not least, we are going to continue with our vice chair responsible of investments, Uğur Bey, is going to talk about many platforms, the financing of wind energy, the cost structure, the role of financing in wind energy. Uğur Bey, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Ismail. Do you hear me? I lost my voice. I think it's not that bad. I'll do my best to make the presentation. But I have a backup. If I lose my voice, he will continue the presentation. Don't worry. Our starting point as TWEA, we are now the lobby association of wind energy. We are leading towards becoming a think tank, and our desires should be supported by the data somehow. And at this very point in this journey that we started 2.5 years ago in the ministry, what is the financial model for the investors? How do we implement these projects? And while implementing these projects, what are the requirements of these projects and the needs of the financing? We started to explain all these matters, and while doing so, not only orally, but also we tried to create a financial model, and we presented it to the ministry. These are the data.
Kullanın. İsterseniz siz kendi varsayımlarınızı kullanın.
Use it like you want to use them, or use it like we do it. So this is the information we give you. And we're talking about yet now on the base price of wind and solar energy. If there's a base price like this, it's because of the TWEA. So the YECA, which will be proclaimed in January, and if you give the opportunity to the people who get into it, then it is for the investors, and we see that it helps the investors, and this makes us happy. So sharing information, sharing data, and being transparent helps. So we will continue to be transparent with our information. So we have a financial model here, and there is also a leveled price range, so that the investor can decide how much profit he can make, or whether he's going to make a profit or not. So on one side you have the cost of electricity. So what is LCOE? So this has nothing to do with the prices. What we understand under LCOE, we look only at the costs, because we are trying to find out what the cost of the production of a unit energy is. So our costs are our initial investment costs and our operational costs and their project development costs. So we have three main costs. Otherwise, on the other hand, we have energy production. Are we talking about a plant which is 30% or 45% efficiency, or with offshore over 50%? So the cost divided through the efficiency of the electric production. So we have to look at the cost of capital. So we have three main points that we use to create this analysis and send it to the ministry. So look at the cost comparison methodology in the world. There are different institutions. One of them is Lazard, and one of them is Bloomberg New Energy, so who do these type of calculations very well. So we see the mean price of electricity. And the number you see is the wind onshore. So it's $50 for US, and it is the most cheap electricity production. So if if you want to produce energy with the lowest cost, then with the lowest price, then it's wind energy. And this is also for us a priority, up until we need a supply security. We have a very limited oil and natural gas. So this is important for us. We see different scenarios here with different capital investment, different costs, and different investment costs. So under different scenarios, whichever is the most actual, we look or which is the most up to date, we can see it on this graph and we can compare it. Maybe some of you want to take a picture. This is a report of Lazard, which is publicly open for public access. So why is it in my presentation? Because I want to make a comparison. The suggestions and the costs in the United States and in Turkey are different. So I'm going to talk also about the difference. So the LCOE shows us which is the cheapest electricity production in time, but it changes. So we have onshore wind has a 65%, and it's in a downward trend because of the development in technology. This means the rotors are getting larger and the megawatts are going up and the electricity price, unit price, goes down. So solar has a better trend, and there is also an increase in efficiency for solar panels. So we have 83% here. So LCOE gives us the opportunity to make a comparison of technologies in time. So BNE's report, it's BNF, Bloomberg NF. It's not open to public access, but we asked them for permission. So this is their old report. Their new report will be published next month. We see different EMEA countries and the comparison of their LCOEs. We have a low scenario like Spain, where it's 36.0 per megawatt hour, and in Turkey we see the highest cost in energy production. Unfortunately, we, compared to other European countries, are more expensive. Why? Because are wind turbines in Turkey more expensive or the OPEX higher? No. So what is the total investment cost? Turkey is at the last, and it's the cheapest. But how can we have the highest price? So Spain comes after Sweden, and the most expensive country is Germany when it comes to the production cost of a wind turbine. This is without storage. So the operational expenditures, there are no differences. Our capacity is also not very different. Do we have more wind so that our LCOE is low? No. There are other countries where you have more wind. For example, Great Britain, and there is a difference between 8% because the northern winds are blowing harder. So in Turkey, we have a high capital cost. look at the other numbers, it's between 6.5, 9.5, and 10 in Europe. But in Turkey, the capital cost is between 13 and 15%. So the LCOE, because of the country risk in Turkey is high, the LCOE is high. So during the investment phase of a wind turbine, we have 3 points we consider, and there is also the foundation. So what is the investment cost and then the wind potential? In terms of investment cost, we're on the same level. On wind potential, we are very good. But when it comes to the capital cost, we are very bad because of the country risk. There is, of course, a perception about Turkey, and we have difficulty to changing this perspective or this narrative. So, secondly, there are these credit notes of companies like Standards and Poor's, and we dropped for 3 points. And this year, fortunately, we get up 2 points. So we are the only country, like the Minister of Economy said, which fell 3 points and went up 2 points in the same year. So the wind sector in Turkey goes to Europe with their 13 gigawatts. And we're talking about the success of Turkish companies. So the country risk is important in this respect. So here we see another data from Bloomberg NEF when it comes to Turkey, the country risk. So here are other countries from all around the world, not only Europe. And when it comes to capital costs, Turkey is also on the high side. So this is an information that Bloomberg NEF shared with us. So this risk is very high. So 13% looks like good for young people maybe, but let's imagine this. You have dollars in your hand and you put it into a bank. So what do you get in interest rate? It's not my subject area, that's what he said. It's around 3.5%, or 4% interest rate. So if I invest my money in a bank, then I receive 4% interest rate. But the investor have to take the investment risk and the country risk. And what does he expect to earn in Turkey? It's around 13%. So this means that the leveled costs are high. So the bond income. So these are my bonds, and how much interest rate is taken, and it's paid back. From 2007 to 2024, we see in dollar bonds, in comparison with other countries like Spain, France, Germany, Italy, and US, our country risk is always high. In 2013, it was the lowest point, and this was the time when the credit note of Turkey was investable, and the access to money was easy, and it was possible to draw money into the country. So with the right politics, and if you can control the narrative, then the money comes in. So in time, we show how the country risk develops through time. So the costs, where is the world going? And here we have also another data set from Bloomberg. So up until 2019, we see that there is there are costs who are decreasing costs for establishing a 1 megawatt turbine. So these are the numbers from the United States, but $800,000 per megawatt hour. So there is no EOP in it. So the costs like transport or roads, for example, is not in it. But after that, then we see, after 2019, we see an increase of 26% because the increase of goods, because the prices of turbines increased. We could buy these turbines with lower prices, and now they are costing more. Another important aspect for us is the wind capacity of Turkey. Our wind is very high, and it's enough for Turkey's energy production. So here we see the wind energy potential map of Turkey. When we look at the 100-meter elevation, that we see the most, where we have the most wind capacity in the west. So it decreases when we go to the east. So together with the storage, we are using a lot of fields, and we are running out of fields in the west, and we have to travel to the east, but there we have a lower wind potential. So storage, up until now, we had 34.6 gigawatts, and there is also from the ministry, the report from the ministry says 39 megawatts, and to get solar and wind combined capacity, we see that we have a storage dominance of 44%. In YEKA, there is a 6 gigawatt capacity, and in the report, and in licensing, there is a capacity around 20%, and unlicensed licensed capacity, and without licensed capacity is 27%. We see the breakdowns here. Now, these LCOE studies, we give the ministry so they are informed. And the results we are sharing with you today, we use some parameters.
1 megawatt per investment cost is $1.2 million. It might change depending on the project, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. This is a total investment cost. And if we're talking about these storing projects, the general consensus is that $200,000 is the cost. 2 years ago, it was $400,000, but there's a decrease of 50%. We don't know whether this decrease will go on or not. And now, 35 capacity factor, and the equity cost, which is 12% in 2027, and 2% USD inflation. RES LCOE is equal to $56.2 US. From $55, which is the ceiling price, towards $35, the floor price. For the new wind YEKA, it is not correct to say that less than $56 is not going to worth it. There are different data. With the 35 capacity factor, we can say that one wind farm, in order to commission it, in order for the investor to make money out of this wind farm, we say it is $56. There are some sensitivities. LCOE's most important items. What are those? The investment cost and capacity factor. On the right-hand side, LCOE deduction rate, it is 12%. I mean the capital cost. So under different scenarios, we can say that LCOE's direction, we can see it. And in the financial model study that we prepared for the ministry, we provide sensitivity analysis for more than one component. Under different conditions and situations, how much of the financing can be taken from the banks, or up until how many megawatt we can make investments. We need to also talk about the RSC, I mean the wind farms with the storing capacity. We can say that $64.5 per megawatt, because there is an additional cost of storing, and the also renewable investment is also taken into consideration while making this calculation. But let me repeat, the potential income that we can get out of the storing, I mean the arbitrage or the other services income, are not included. We are just looking at the cost. Therefore, from this perspective, it is for the $64.5 per megawatt. When there's income from the services, this will decrease. As TREP, our purpose, TREP LCOE study is going to be prepared every 6 months and will be presented as a report. This is the preview of it, but as of 2025, we will prepare it regularly in an updated version, and we will share it with the relevant authorities, public authorities, and with our stakeholders through our website. What we believe is that as long as we are transparent and as long as we support our demands with the solid data, we can get good responses from the public. So we are going to become a think tank. This is our final purpose. And that's all. Thank you very much. Your voice sounds good. Thank you very much, Uğur Bey. Despite your throat problem, you summarized it very well. I took some notes out of the presentation of Uğur Bey. Turbine blade analogy shows us 3 important parameters in such investments. We don't have any chance to interfere with the wind potential. It is given. What do we do? When the wind speed gets lower, or more technically, the intensity of the power, if it decreases, we turn to bigger turbines. It will increase the efficiency of the turbines, and it will be useful for decreasing the unit price. But the most important element is the financing cost. And the financing cost, it's a parameter which is directly affected by the financial conditions. The incentives or the financing opportunities are of great importance. And the storing cost, he mentioned also about it. And in order to decrease the effect of the capex, it is important to produce site incomes. Okay, I completed the session. We have very limited amount of time. If you do have any questions, we can get them. Please introduce yourself. Do you hear me? Thank you very much for these presentations. Mustafa Berke, European Climate Foundation Program Director. It is nice to hear that TREP is trying to position itself as a think tank. As far as I can see, I think you're already a think tank. Congratulations. Let me ask one question to Uğur Bey. LCOE study that you conducted, did you compare it with the other resources of electricity, with the natural gas, nuclear, and coal? This is my first question, and the second question is for Ufuk Bey. You mentioned about prioritized sites. In total, how many gigawatts established offshore wind power do you forecast? And third one is for Ebru Hanım. Technically, you have been very successful. Wind energy has become more visible, and then social reaction and resistance start. You might have seen that in the field in hydropower. For example, we had some issues in 2017. Once we have super fast licensing processes enter into force, then there might be some reactions from the society. Maybe we can proactively manage it, in terms of communication or the best practices. Do you have any suggestions in that regard? We would like to explain what we know. We don't want to talk about the fields that we don't know, the coal, the natural gas, or hydro. Can we do that? Maybe. But we are not experts in those fields, so we don't want to present something that we can't stand for it. We can do that for the solar, but we are Association of Turkish Wind Energy, and our purpose in LCOE study of TWEA, the main purpose is about the authorizations or the projects or the operational process when the costs increase by 50%, while visiting TWEA, for example, our LCOE is increasing $3, or our costs increase that much. We are explaining them with numbers. This is the effect of the financing. Some investors will not be able to pay for it. So each change or the amendment in the legislation, we can show the effect with LCOE. And secondly, in annual periods, in 6 months periods, we will be showing the efficiency levels of the turbines, the decrease in the country risk, for example. We would like to show them. In Saudi Arabia, there was a tender of solar. The price was 0.10 cents. No, 1.03 dollar cent. We say 55. Why is it the case in Arabia? Maybe they don't have the system usage cost. We don't know the technical specification of the tender, but their capital cost is lower than us in Saudi Arabia. So the ministry can say that if it is $10 there, then let's make it $10 in Turkey. No, it's not possible. So this is what we wanted to show. Other technologies, we don't focus on them. So we need to be focusing on our field of expertise. And the public resistance. Would it happen in wind energy? We think about it, and we need to develop ourselves. When we set out for the way 3 years ago, we did an internal evaluation meeting, and these are the muscles that we are powerful, but we need to be better in creating awareness among the public. We need to better those actions. I think we are a little bit missing. We need to inform the public more. We need to focus on that more. Yes, the public, they used to say that, okay, we would like to have wind energy, but not in my backyard. But our villagers are big shareholders of our projects. We need to keep them involved. We need to inform them correctly. And we need to explain them that Turkey needs wind energy. Other question was for me, I guess. In 20 sites, 1,400 turbines. That's the layout. And in 5 prioritized sites, there are 350 turbines. If you get 10 megawatt, then it makes 3.5 megawatt. If you take 20, then 7 gigawatt. At a bigger scale, it might change between 14 to 28 megawatt. That's the capacity. I agree with what Uğur Bey just stated. I don't know whether you listened to the previous session. While getting ready for the session, I made a search in ChatGPT. In the criticism, superism mechanisms, environmental and social values have not been evaluated, and the approvals will be taken by that. This is not correct, but it doesn't matter. Super print. It is eliminating the conditions, but you are still monitoring them. You are getting the plan approved, but the sequencing is going to start, and repetitive practices will be eliminated. And as stated by Uğur Bey, maybe we weren't very good at creating awareness, but this Congress itself is about informing the public as well, and we go wherever we are invited in order to increase the awareness. But of course, new capacities are required. Maybe the ministry should also take some actions to inform the public. We haven't heard about it. Maybe some actions about nuclear. Maybe in the future we can work together. Thank you very much. Okay. We ran out of time. We got 3 questions, and we answered them all together. If you don't have any other questions, I adjourn the session.
Da kapanışı yapmak istiyorum.
I want to close up this session because there are no further questions. So everybody has their private life, their business life, but still you as TWEA has worked tirelessly for this organization. And in these 2 days, we have here an international level organization, and I'm hopeful that we will meet again with bigger and more fruitful meetings. Thank you. So, Exim Energy Operations Department, and we would like to thank him and his to our moderators and for their support with him and his wife. And I think there is a question.
I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all speakers for your valuable time. During your presentation, Mr. Uygur, you explained about the capital cost and country risk on a higher side. What are the factors you think and suggest to follow to reduce these costs and risks? Thank you.
CAPEX cost. Şimdi CAPEX costu nasıl düşürebiliriz?
So how can we lower the capex cost? The biggest number comes from the wind turbine. So how can we lower the cost of a wind turbine? So the Western manufacturer and the Eastern manufacturer. So the Eastern manufacturers are lower in cost. So if the belief in the products from the east is increased, so we can use it. And the roads, for example, like infrastructures, and these are the goods. So we can control the goods side. So the parts where we can control, especially on the BOP part, are not so much because we can use other suppliers' products, but we are also dependent on the global trends. We look at the global goods trends, and the workforce is cheaper in Turkey. That's why the capex the capex cost was low, but now it is not the case anymore. And in this report of the Bloomberg, which is going to be published in December, the number will be revised upwards. So we are dependent on global trends. There are not much we can do, and the turbine is the highest cost. And when we look at the breakdown of a turbine, and we will be able to show also the change in the component prices and what their effect on the total capex cost is. Thank you so much. This shows us. This was the last session of TWEC. Thank you.